Hi, I'm Melissa Bill, and welcome to the Business Roundup, where we catch up with the movers and shakers in the business world. Today, joining me is Tony Falco. He is the COO of Hydrolix, and it's a streaming data lake company. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Melissa. Thanks for having me.
Can you start off, before we get started, a little bit about your background in the company?
Yes, actually, that'd be great. My background is really in distributed systems, sort of on the go-to-market side and the customer support side of distributed systems. So very early on, uh, I was supporting like the Bud Bowl and some really kind of like early live events around the Super Bowl, and I got uh, invited to join a company called Akamai, which was the first big content delivery network. And basically it put servers all over the world at massive scale and then distributed content, images, web pages, and eventually video files in these servers so that they were much closer to the end user. And it's really what accelerated the web. So, Akamai was one of the key companies to accelerate the web back in, the 2000s. And then from there, I've been working in database technologies that are sort of matched with these hyperscale networks like Akamai. A whole new class of databases came up, and that led me to Hydrolix. Now, Hydrolix is a company that was founded by some other people from Akamai, but also Splunk and Cisco, to solve the problem of databases handling massive amounts of log files. And while it's not a very sexy topic, it really is the key to the way the internet runs well. Every time you click on an image or you start a stream, like if you start a Netflix stream or something on Fox, hundreds of messages or events that log what's happening on all of the different servers between you and the origin server or the CDN are emitted every minute. So, like, say you watch a 2-hour movie, you could be generating hundreds of thousands of log messages, and while those log messages each in themselves may not be that interesting, they all contain some fact or some detail about your experience that streamers are very, very interested in. They want to make sure that you are having a great streaming experience. They also want to make sure their ads are playing. They want to make sure that you're being served the appropriate content. They want to make sure that the people that are consuming the streams are actually paying for the streams. And so these log files, while they may seem, in and of themselves very dull, paint a picture of how the internet is running and how your customers are experiencing it. And it's not just for streamers. Financial institutions care about this. So Hydrolix came about to make it possible to store all those files, because they create so many files. The use of the internet creates so many files, because every single person using it is creating all sorts of these log files that most people have to throw them away. They can't even use them. So traditional technologies make it really difficult for you to store them for more than just a couple days. So, like, what do you do to plan for Black Friday? What do you do to plan for a big event? What if you're if you're a CISO, a security officer, and you want to look back in time and see like who was doing what on our servers when a bad event happened? We help companies store more of the facts that matter about how their users are experiencing their websites. And we try to eliminate the compromises around cost and data retention so they can store more data.
And now, can you describe what sustainability looks like for the company in regards to that?
So, you would think that if we're going to store more data, that it would actually drive up costs. But in fact, there's a couple of really big ways that we play a role in sustainability. First of all, and by the way, we are a global company at this point, where we have almost 1,000 customers. We have like 750 customers, probably more accurate, all around the globe. And this is actually a huge concern in Europe, especially. EMEA is always asking about sustainability, and it's beginning to become a concern in certain industries in the U.S. Two ways that we impact sustainability. The first is that we just make it possible for you to use less compute resources, which may sound contradictory, but oftentimes in order to deliver a good experience, people over provision. They don't know what's going wrong, and so they'll make decisions that's just safer to add more compute. And everything on the internet requires electricity. Every time you send an email, that's going to be stored someplace and is going to require electricity to keep it in storage. And so if you can right size the infrastructure that people use by giving them the right information about their websites or their e-commerce sites, then you can help them cut down on their bill. The second thing is that our architecture is actually designed to lower your data footprint. We've built a system um, that reduces your log sizes by 50 times, 50x. Your data footprint can actually be smaller than if you're only sampling the logs using another solution. And we've built it in a way, there's a whole modern way of building software that uses basically elastic systems, systems that can scale up when there's a big event and scale down when that event is over. And so we've built a system that can scale for your live events and then go down to practically zero when it's not being used. And so by reducing your data footprint, giving you more information about how you should be provisioning your systems, or the electricity you're going to use, so that you right size it, and by building an elastic system, we think that we've addressed the notion of sustainability quite well.
That's pretty cool. And like, what is required to implement these, change? Well, first of all, what changes should companies make to have like digital tech stack and infrastructure to support sustainability? What are some of the things they can do?
Well, I think that they definitely need to have an observability. They need to be able to monitor and observe what's happening on their system. You know, one of the things that we find a lot is people provision things and then forget about them. So there's a bunch of and also there's this whole notion of dark data. Companies it's like, think about a storage unit. Sometimes you just put stuff in a storage unit and you forget about it and you're paying for that storage unit. Do you really need that stuff? So having a plan that gives you insight into what your date, what systems you're using, where they are, what you're spending, really all comes down to has a sustainability through line. And also, I think sustainability also means sustainability of people. If you have a tech stack that's burning your people out because because you can't get insights into what's going on in your system, and you have people working crazy hours to solve problems, then the people themselves become less sustainable. It becomes like physically less sustainable. But I'll give you a concrete example of how increased visibility actually cuts down on your resource usage. We had a customer, a bank, who, when they used to have issues with authentication, people trying to log in. Now, that's a big deal for a bank, right? Because most banks have gone digital, and people, if they can't get in, they're going to get stressed. So what they would do is it would be a red alert moment. They'd get 20 engineers, jump on a bridge, phone bridge, or a Zoom call, and they spend hours working together, testing things, and trying to recreate the problem. Now, with us, they've said it's just a click of a button. Because we save all the data, so they don't have to try to recreate it. And that's an example of where more information stored properly, compressed and everything, actually reduces the amount of people effort, the amount of resources that need to be consumed to actually solve a problem. You're going from 20 people, hours, them burning out, lots of electricity being used to do this research, to just one click of the button.
And they're able to get that information.
Yep.
That's amazing.
Yep.
And now, what's required to implement these changes?
Well, I think the digital transformation is something that sort of uses a general term, and really that just means, moving more of your business processes into, the computerized workflows, but also like rethinking your work, what you're doing. It's not just like a one for one. It's not like you're just going to, recreate your facts, but on your desktop. It's just the whole way systems interact. And I think it's kind of naturally taken care of itself. I think that one of the natural trends that favors sustainability is reducing cost. And there's a strong correlation between your cloud costs and the amount of resources you're using, and hence the amount of electricity you're using. And I certainly do not want to make it just about electricity. And also, there's a lot of green energy sources that are now being associated with data centers, and not enough, but there's still plenty. So I think the trend towards lower cost and increased visibility is really already driving people that way. but they're still stuck in legacy solutions. It's really hard to switch from the legacy. So, companies just have to, to implement these changes, they need to start planning now. Patrick Byrne, who is is an analyst for Gartner, has tracked the growth of just log files over the last 20 years. Actually, I think it's like 17 years. He has seen log files grow 30%, just log files, the kind of log files I was talking about, 30% year over year, which means every 2.5 years or so, they're doubling in size. So if you were storing a terabyte in year one, you'd be storing like obviously 2 terabytes in 3 years, and then it would be 4 terabytes in 6 years, then it'd be 8 terabytes in I'm doing the math wrong. Can I start over?
Oh yeah, sure, definitely.
Okay. Patrick Byrne, who's a Gartner analyst and tracks the growth of log files, has seen logs since 2009. Has tracked the growth of log files, and he's seen them grow from basically they grow 30% year over year, and that means they double almost every 2.5 years. They double, which means that in a short period of time, you'll see an explosion in log files. So think about if all these companies are moving more and more online from today to 2005, they're going to have double the amount of log files by 2028, and then double again by 2031, which means that if they're not preparing right now for that explosion in log files, then they're going to be behind and they're going to be playing catch up. Now, how does that affect sustainability? In the same way, they're going to be stuck on legacy solutions that can store less data, give them less insight into what's going on, but also that store them ineffectively. A lot of the legacy solutions actually increase your data footprint. In order for something to be fault tolerant, which a lot of these systems need, you may have to store 3 copies of the data, and then an index may increase the footprint another 20%. So you're actually going the opposite direction of where you want to go. You're increasing your digital footprint, and hence you're decreasing your sustainability. So companies need to be planning for where their data is going, and planning for the tools that actually make that data valuable. Because at the end of the day, it's actually horribly wasteful to store data that you can't use or put it in cold storage, and that you have that whole dark data problem.
Right. You need to like know when you're going to be, things that you're going to need to use and stuff that can actually just be discarded at a certain point in time.
That's right.
And now, how is Hydrolix making its own infrastructure sustainable?
We run this as a service for our customers. We run it in the cloud, which tends to be more sustainable than on-prem. We focus on, again, always looking for ways to increase the overall efficiency of the platform. That includes increasing our compression rates. That includes reducing the amount of compute necessary to run the background processes. And also, we're focusing on really efficient multi-tenancy, which is meaning that we can use the same infrastructure for lots of customers. And it's sort of like a basic concept in SaaS software, which is to just increase the efficiency of a given cluster of computers and the number of customers that they can serve. So, fortunately, sustainability and operating margins and profits all correlate pretty closely from an operational standpoint when you're a SaaS computer company. So we're always focused on how we can reduce the amount of background resources necessary to deliver a good customer experience to our customer.
And then, what is like probably um, what do you think sustainable practices are, as far as a major buying factor for customers? Um, how have you heard, like, what are some of the things that you've heard them ask about when it comes to this type of stuff, and how often?
They're very interested both in the computer, so sort of the software itself, and they're very interested also in some of our practices as a company. So it really varies by region. When we do events in EMEA, people don't want plastic gewgaws and tchotchkes. So it's the sensitivities definitely vary, but when it comes down to it, what they're looking for is anything from what certifications we have that guarantee that we're following standard best practices, to actually running a running a proof of concept where we have to demonstrate that we can give them the lower data footprints and the lower compute costs. Again, because there's such a close correlation. If you're running a solution in the cloud and it costs you $100,000, then you're paying for a markup on the compute itself, which means you're paying, and that compute is consuming electricity. So if we can come in and say we offer you this for $50,000 and also increase your performance, there's a really strong correlation between that cost savings and the sustainability. It's nearly 1-to-1 when you factor out all the other sort of human factors on top of it. And so, but it's very industry focused in the United States. You might see advertising or media much more focused on companies that have reputational risks. Finance kind of has gone back and forth on this on the sustainability goals, but I think you see and then outside of those industries in the United States, it's really been touch and go. It just depends on which company we're talking to.
And then what do you forecast for like the future? Or what are some of the trends you see happening in this industry?
Well, the industry is so stretched out over different adoption cycles. So you have some parts of the industry that are on the cutting edge and embrace change and are looking for ways to to innovate and cut costs and reduce their footprint. And you have other companies that are very, and it's not even verticals anymore. Like there's some of the major banks are very innovative. I was fortunate to go to a tech summit for Bank of America, and they're embracing technical change and innovation at a really rapid pace. So it was really an interesting. It upended my. It definitely upended my preconceptions about what a financial institution of their size, how they approach innovation and change. So really, to speak of an industry is really speak about, the segments of the industry, the early adopters, the fast followers, and some companies that are more attached to a conservative roadmap. And I think the early adopters are going to lead the way in always. It's always going to be looking to reduce costs and to reduce footprint and to continue to outsource services that they can afford to outsource. And when you outsource a service, you get that concentration, you get the optimization of resource utilization. So if everybody's repeating the same sort of services in their own infrastructure, then they're repeating the resource utilization, and they're basically all consuming a fixed unit. When you put it all together in a single service, like a SaaS software service, like somebody's doing your auth services, a third party, you get this efficiency, this market efficiency, but also this resource efficiency. So I think as people move to adopt more third party services as core to their platform, they will naturally gravitate towards a more sustainable footprint.
And now, do you have any upcoming like announcements or anything coming up that you'd like to share as well?
That'd be great. Yeah. So we in the past several years, we've been really mainly seen as a streaming data lake, which means that we combine like long-term storage with stream processing, or the ability to consume live streams of data and act on them very quickly. And that has been a very general approach that we've had. And now we are sort of expanding our approach to the market by creating templated solutions that people can just show up at our marketplace and begin using it with some of the biggest data sets in the world. The data sets are being created by the biggest CDNs. That's about to expand from CDN visibility into things like bot detection and really all the security use cases. So how this ties back to sustainability is right now, people, most of the companies that are delivering today's security solutions are storing data the most expensively. They're using lots of compute and therefore electricity to query it, and they're still not giving you a very good insight into what's going on with your system security. We have been, because we've shown that we can cost effectively and without sacrificing any performance at all, store massive amounts of data. We're now getting pulled into more of the security use cases where they're either keeping data for only 3 days, which seems really contrary to the goal of understanding what's happening on your website, or they're sampling, which means that you're going to miss things, because if you're just guessing what you should store, you're going to miss things. So we've just launched our first CDN visibility solution. CDN Insights just went out on November 17th, today as we're recording this.
Nice.
And then we are going to be launching a bot insights product that addresses concerns we've heard from CISOs. And I can tie this right straight back to sustainability, because AI, most of the traffic on the internet today is being driven by bots. We've seen it in our customers. Our own customers have shown it us in their logs. We've seen it ourselves. We have a customer who just reported a 6-figure overage charge from their ISP, which means that traffic that they didn't want, that bypassed their firewalls, got to their origin web server, the main server that everything is based on before it gets distributed, and it drove up their costs by 6 figures. And it's an e-commerce site, obviously with close margins. So that's compute that shouldn't be used. That is nonsense traffic. That's people trying to scrape you. That's people that could be a cybersecurity threat. That could be like AI bots trying to create arbitrage. People sometimes try to hoard things in baskets so other people can't buy it. There's a lot of sort of like normal sort of, informational stuff going on, but there's a lot of nonsense traffic that's hitting websites. If you can't stop that, then you're going to be wasting your resources, our resources as a world, on things that have no value to any human. So we're really excited about bot insights and how that reinforces not just a good security message, but it also helps people reduce their resource consumption.
That's wonderful. And like, if people wanted more information on that and just the company, what would be the best place for them to find that?
I think they should just go to hydrolix.io. So hydrolix.io. We have a lot of French people in the company and a lot of French customers. So Hydrolix is also good. It's the French pronunciation. And but Hydrolix is it's a streaming data lake with solutions for all the big data problems that people are seeing right now, that are not just highly performant, but also they reduce your cost and your energy footprint. So sustainability is part of the game.
Definitely important. Thank you so much. It's been a joy talking to you, and I learned a lot. And that's the one thing I like about interviewing people, in different types of fields, that I get to kind of learn a little bit about it. So I really appreciate you being here today.
Well, I appreciate the platform and the questions, and your job must be fascinating.
Mhm. It is. I get to talk to people like you. So thank you very much. Thank you for joining the Business Roundup, where we always try to bring you interviews with some of the leading people in business, whether it be technology, finance, or energy. I hope you tune in. I hope you subscribe and listen, and we'll give you updates for new interviews that are coming up. Until next time, I'm Melissa Bill.